where that can happen, whether the conditions there are going to be safe, and I provided materials to you. There's all kinds of articles coming both from the industry as well as from the fire regulation people that involve concerns about marijuana creating fire hazards. And if you don't regulate it, and if we, for example, invalidated or rescinded our ordinance that presently exists, then people can grow marijuana wherever they feel like growing it. I mean, we don't have anything that is specific to it. People could grow marijuana in their garages. They could grow it in their backyards, grow it in their front yards, potentially grow it in their houses.
Oh my God.
Grow it in stores, grow it in industrial. I mean, you've left the time, the times that they can do it, the locations that they can do it, and how they can do it completely unregulated. And I mean, there are state regulations that do apply, but in terms of zoning, the state laws don't reach down to where the locations within communities where marijuana is being grown.
And I'm supportive. I was only looking specifically at 1300.08, where it's talking about the age of 21 years old. I definitely think we need to have conversation, and the rest of the ordinance would be good. I just wonder if it kind of were overreaching by saying.
You could eliminate what we're really trying to do there is just establish what we thought was an age, so that there'd be some appropriateness,
kind of maturity,
growing it. But if you want to eliminate that and keep the rest of it, I mean, that's certainly a possibility. But
yeah, I'm thinking about kind of where we would land. I want ordinances and rules for electric and water, and you depend on the right department, the building department. I want to put a giant arc welder in my garage, and it takes 480 volt. Well, the building department's not going to approve. Some inspector's going to come and say, no, you can't do that on a residential. This is a fire hazard or whatever. So, fully support that. Like, just want to think through, use the right lever to regulate properly and clearly. The idea of, I could see where you could say, look, someone who's 18 and meets all the other requirements, they mature enough to grow marijuana in their house. Maybe we want them to be 21. See that, but I want us to just kind of use the right lever for the job. And so the building department should be able to speak to fire hazards and water and electrical. We want to put that in the ordinance to say it must meet safe general building standards or whatever. It must meet our existing codes or that. But I think the age limit in this specific instance, it seems. I've said it before, so it seems a little.
I would say this to the age limit on. Let's break it apart into two parts. Let's talk just about the recreation. The state law, the Recreational Act, says you have to be 21.
Okay.
Now, for enforcement purposes, if we adopt an ordinance, we're doing something that's somewhat similar to what happens with state laws that are misdemeanors. For example, like drunk driving. We also have an ordinance on drunk driving. Now, in that case, it's slightly different because there's certainly express authority for us to also regulate. But that gives us our ordinance to operate under for enforcement purposes without having to operate under state law and, perhaps use another enforcement agency other than our own ordinance enforcement through the township attorney's office. I don't know as though the prosecutor's office, to the extent they would be the agency, is going to have the personnel to enforce, if that's part why I think it's in there as part of the ordinance. But, if you wanted to take that out, you could. And like I said, I'm already recommending, and I think we'll make a change on the medical side of it to make sure that we're not prohibiting anyone from using marijuana who's authorized or who's under the Medical Act, who's below the age of 21.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the conversation.
Mr. DeBartolomeo?
Yeah, I was going to just kind of reiterate what Jack said there about the medical aspect. If the recreational marijuana is state law saying you cannot use if under the age of 21. And going back to what Doug had said about alcohol is a state law that is prohibited under 21. Do we need to mention it at all about recreational marijuana being used under the age of 21?
Well, again,
It's
Ron,
redundant.
the issue isn't so much that it's more of an enforcement. I mean, right now, for example, take minors in possession of alcohol. Those are typically prosecuted. You know, Chuck Towner, of course, as you know, it actually does the prosecutions, but we represent other communities as well where we do them, and it's typical for local units of government to prosecute those under ordinances because the prosecutors' offices are busy with other more serious crimes, and they prefer that misdemeanors, where possible, be regulated under local ordinances just because of the resources. If you were assured that you get enforcement, you know, if it's not going to be through us on our ordinance, then I would agree with you, but I don't know if that'll happen.
So are you saying that we're comparing apples to oranges when we say recreational marijuana use under the age of 21 and alcohol use under the age of 21? I mean, we're comparing.
Well, I think what you're making an assumption is that with alcohol use under 21, that's not, because that's a violation of state law, that the township has no interest in it and doesn't pursue regulating it. And what I'm telling you is that the township does do that because it's encouraged that local units on lesser offenses that are misdemeanors act through their ordinances, because that frees up the prosecutor's offices to handle more what they consider to be more serious offenses. And I don't know how many resources we would get if it's not under our ordinance where we have authority to enforce, if it's left up to the county prosecutor's office. You know, if you're a minor in possession and you're arrested in Clinton Township, you're going to be prosecuted under the township ordinance for unlawful possession of alcohol as a minor, not under the state law. Because the prosecutor's office, if you go over there with a warrant for that as a misdemeanor, they're going to say, we don't have time for those cases. Go back to and rewrite it as a ordinance violation. So it's a resource utilization issue that causes it to go under the ordinance, not a question of whether, you know, it's state law versus township ordinance.
So you're saying minors in possession of alcohol is an ordinance that we have here in the township?
Correct.
So what you're saying then is that if we have a minor in possession of alcohol, then the flip side of that, because again, based on state regulation, is that minor possession of marijuana under the age of 21. Is that kind of what you're saying then?
Correct.
So, Madam Chair, one follow-up question. With regard to the ordinance, I understand local ordinance gives us the ability to prosecute and, you know, uphold law. I'm tracking there. Ordinance for for example, minor in possession of alcohol. Is that a zoning ordinance? Is it a separate ordinance? Is it equal? You know, if I put the minor in possession of marijuana in this zoning ordinance, does it belong there, or is it equal to
an
ordinance
your point.
where
it may be best to put that in a regulatory ordinance as opposed to the zoning ordinance.
Okay. That's my last question. Thank you. I do appreciate the conversation and the patience with me.
Thank you. Okay, we don't have to go line by line. So we'd be here all night. So if you guys don't mind, I'll just start with just a few comments. Jack, in section 1, the 4th paragraph, whereas the township is desirous of adopting provisions, the 4th line down, it says elimination of ventilation leading to mold offense odors. Should that be offensive?
Yes. good editing skills.
You know, when you work for a law firm, that's what we do. Okay, and also in 1300.01, number 6, where we talk about the principal residence, it says, but it's not limited to voting registration, driver's license, utility bills, federal and state returns designating a particular address. After utility bills, should we have or the word and? Or. Okay.
I'm thinking or.
Does that make sense, Jack? Or federal and state tax returns? It just seems like it's running all together.
That any of those could potentially be used, so that's fine.
You want or, not and, because and saying you got to have all that and, so you want or.
Right. So we should have or after utility bills.
I'm thinking.
I mean, that's
if you like to make it perfectly clear, what we could do is insert to any or all of the following after to.
I think that covers it.
We're at Jen?
Right after the word to, insert any or all of the following. And then gives the